So, welcome to the workshop. I'm Sue Patterson, and I want to help you get school out of your head. You might ask, why does breaking free from schoolish ways matter? Because this is how you're going to get the most out of unschooling. So, your first question is probably, why is this so hard to do? You think you've got it, and then it creeps back in. Well, there can actually be a lot of reasons why it's hard for you. It's all kind of individualized. Sometimes it's because we have rose-colored glasses on and remember things a little differently than how they really were. It was, after all, more than a couple of years ago, right? Or maybe you're locked into a couple of good memories, and those are just harder to let go. Maybe you're a people pleaser to the max, and you were the teacher's pet. Learning the system came easy to you, and you were rewarded over and over. Or maybe your family pushed the idea that success at school was the most important thing. Or maybe the opposite's true, and your family didn't care, and school seemed like the safer place, so you wanted to do well there. Or maybe year in, year out, they wore you down. All your creative ideas were squashed, and before you knew it, you were checking the boxes and staring at the clock, waiting for the bell to ring. But you were convinced this is what you had to do, so you did it. The bottom line is you had years and years of conditioning. So it came in all kinds of ways, sometimes subtly, sometimes harshly. But you were taught to shelve what you think or want and prioritize what the teacher or the school board or even your parents wanted to see. You didn't get a vote. And you got penalized if you veered off the path. So what does that do to a person? Well, first you start to think you really need these experts. I mean, after all, they told you that you did. So you doubt your own capabilities. You certainly haven't been given an opportunity to develop the skill. You find it hard to trust your own conclusions. You're always checking back to see if the expert is giving you the nod or the frown. You're convinced that making a mistake is a terrible thing, when in fact it's just more information to help you modify and adjust what you're doing. You know, that's how the scientific method works anyway. You have a hypothesis and you spend your time trying to see if it's wrong. You're looking for flaws. And even though they teach that, they don't encourage it. I mean, understandably, they have to do what they have to do to get an unruly classroom full of kids from point A to point B. They don't have a lot of time for individualism. And that's how you build confidence. And it might be why you don't have a lot. So believing there's only one right answer when that's not even the truth, but that's what schools led you to believe. You were told only one right way. Schools suggest that the important things are already known, and that's why they push for that one right answer. They don't reward innovation or a creative approach to problem solving. So this creates a pattern for the kids who spend 12 of their formative years spitting out that one right answer, instead of practicing how to think critically, explore options, get back on track if you go down some rabbit hole. Those are the skills a person's going to need. Remember when you were in school and you solved the problem a different way and you didn't get full credit because you didn't use their technique? Only one technique was right. Classrooms discourage us from trying to be creative in our problem solving. And before you know it, you've bought into this one way is the legit way. Or maybe you noticed what happened to the kids who stepped out of line. Were they humiliated, ashamed? Their names going up on the chalkboard? They had to stay in detention after school? Everybody knew who the bad kids were. And you don't want that to happen to you. That's one thing you did know for sure. So you kept your head down and you did what you were told. Or maybe you've agreed with the idea that this stepping off the path just makes everything harder. And why do that? You're not really deliberately trying to seek out challenges, are you? How many times were you told that you have a time schedule to keep and you have to stay on task? And all this leads to a childhood that doesn't get opportunities for problem solving. Schools suggest that the important things are already known, and that's why they push for that one right answer, but they don't reward this innovative or creative way to problem solve. And we end up with patterns. We're looking for that one right answer. We quickly go to the next one to hurry up and get it done. Don't mull it over or ponder if there's another way, or relate to something you've experienced. You remember that kid in the classroom that always wanted to do that? They had a story, they wanted to relate to the topic, but they were quickly shushed. Their classmates groaned. The point was to move through it all as quickly and painlessly as possible. That kid, though, they were trying to make connections in their own head. Nope, follow the plan. Bell's about to ring. It's kind of sad, really. And so, this is why you keep falling back to ways that are familiar. But it's also why you're here. You've decided that you don't want your kids to endure school. So you need to put the reality of it in the front of your mind. Not the glamorized, rose-colored glasses memory of what it was all about. We see that all the time. TV and movies, and especially at this time of year. And while we're all talking together here, our resolve is strong, but then we have a weak moment. We maybe have been in too big of a hurry, or we've gotten caught up in making comparisons, or maybe we simply have skipped our own self-care too many days in a row. Next thing you know, we're back in the rut. We're panicked. Because it's easier to go with the flow than to create a new pattern. You've seen ruts in the roads, right? And these old habits made these ruts, and they came to you from every direction imaginable. Sure, teachers and grades and schools, but then parents at home and relatives at every family get-together wanting to know how you're doing at school, even the grocery store clerk. Everyone asks about school. No one asks, hey, how are you doing with managing friendships these days? Or have you created any healthy habits that you're really excited about? Or what's going on with your self-esteem? Nope, school, school, school. Rut. So what are our big worries when school keeps popping back into our heads? Maybe it's, how can I do this? Will they make any friends? Will they learn what they need? But more likely than not, if you're looking at unschooling, it's this. How do I get them to learn academics without teaching? This is the biggie, right? When you work through everything else, you still have this one to get through. From an unschooling standpoint, we have a few problems with this. So let's talk about it. How do I get them to learn academics without teaching? I'm going to have to reframe this a little. What does academics mean? And are all academics necessary for every child? Do you really believe one size fits all? Did it fit you? And really, we spend a lot of time memorizing facts that are either not relevant today or actually proven wrong. Memorizing fractions because we'd never have a calculator on us all the time? We do. Or whole word or phonics for language arts classes, those approach flip-flopped all the time. Or if camels store water in their humps, or if lightning never strikes twice, or Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb. And of course we have Christopher Columbus and the real history of Thanksgiving and Pluto. We wasted a considerable amount of time on reading and discussing and being quizzed on all of these things. And then they're later discovered to not even be true. Wouldn't it be better to help our kids know how to dig up resources when they need them? On their phones or tablets or desktops? The speed of change and information now, it's only going to get faster. What we focused on 10 years ago is already archaic. Everything builds on the knowledge from the prior generation. When I was in school, we laughed at the idea of video phone calls. Now, FaceTime is an everyday occurrence for lots of people. Our phones carry around all the data we could need, and it's constantly updated. Why make anyone memorize random facts? Reading more about how unschooling works will help you. Reading about how others who've done this will help you break out of the box that your years of school put you in. Because sometimes we feel really alone doing this. And people ask us, hey, are you sure about this? Do you actually know anyone that was homeschooled and turned out okay? So that's why I wrote that book. We did have a collection of stories, let alone, we had 75 of them explaining what their lives were like while they pursued this unconventional path. It's at Amazon and also available as an ebook now. I'll give you the links below. But I want to talk a little more about this academics aspect. There's a heavy emphasis on academics in school because that's how schools and teachers are scored. We all see the arts vanishing. Shop classes, gone. Encouraged internships out in the community, barely there. Unschooled kids get to keep all those things as options in their worlds. But thinking more about how these supposedly more important subjects are determined, it's not because they're listening to what kids need, or even looking around at the world for what kids need. Too many people want to say what's important for kids to know, and they're not usually the most in tune people anyway. Legislators and bureaucrats that need to have their position represented and not scrapped. In fact, the corporate-style version of school reform that's endorsed these days by politicians and journalists and billionaires consists of a series of really debatable tactics. Many of them are just bribes and threats to force educators to jack up the test scores. Hello, interruption there. Because we got a lot of money involved here with this. And we have these so-called reformers overlooking the research that's not even debatable. And to make it worse, did you know that a lot of the decisions that get made about what's going into textbooks come from Texas? They buy the most textbooks, so they get the biggest say. They have the biggest lobby, and so they make sure that the information is transmitted the way the Texas legislature wants it to be done. Well, that explains a few things, right? Nobody is really paying much mind to the most important person in all of this, the learner. Learners really do have curiosity until they're told they have to shelve it to the lesson so that the lesson can be followed. But they do have an intrinsic desire to figure things out. We know this. Unschooling families see this all the time. But what happens when you don't pay attention to the learner? What happens when they find the academic task stressful or boring, or they're far less likely to understand or even remember the content? We know this from our own experience. People are not machines where you can adjust the input, like listening to a lecture or reading a textbook or filling out a worksheet, and then you're going to yield this reliable output that learning will have taken place. The factors that matter are how the learner is experiencing the topic. What meaning have they attached to it? Are they interested in it? How do they relate to the topic based on their own experiences and feelings? That's how real learning takes place. There's no room for that in the regular classroom, or even in just the regular school equation, because that would apply to homeschooling too. So if you're one of those people who think, yeah, we don't need more people who are soft or who only want to talk about feelings, I beg to differ. And so does Google. Back in 2013, Google decided to crunch all the numbers to see what characteristics their best employees possessed. It was called Project Oxygen, and it shocked everybody. Science, technology, engineering, math, those were not at the core of what made their people do such awesome work. Instead, this is what they found. Look at these ideas. Notice how academic achievements are not even making the list. Communication and empathy, problem solving, and making connections when things get complex. All of these ranked higher than the STEM skills. Google found that it's not good enough to be brilliant if you can't communicate with your coworkers or lead a team. And then, this past spring, they released a study showing that they had taken it even further. They weren't sure if they had it right. Certainly tech skills would be a factor in here somewhere at Google of all places. And they did this thing called Project Aristotle. And they found that the most innovative and productive ideas did not come from the smartest people in the room. When they analyzed the data, they found these soft skills to be what made the team successful. And on the top of the list was emotional safety. To succeed, team members must feel confident speaking up and making mistakes. They must know they're being heard. Well, they're not alone. Chevron and IBM have done similar studies to see if they could predict who the best employees would be. And these are the things that matter in the workplace in 2018, not something that's emphasized in school. So I bring this to you for two reasons. Number one, because people always say that unschoolers are not preparing the kids for the real world, that they need these hard skills to be successful. But company after company is discovering that it's the soft skills that really push someone over the top. And number two, this last little piece of information about thriving and emotional security. How often do we hear people say, toughen those kids up, or the world isn't going to be that nice to them? And this is proof that that approach is dead wrong. So I'll read it again from my notes. To succeed, team members must feel confident speaking up and making mistakes. They must know they're being heard. It's not what schools do, but that is what unschoolers do. Okay, so back to our big issue from earlier. So we get it now. It's much more than learning academics. It's learning real life skills. But there's one more problem with this question, and it's that word teaching. I'm not saying never ever use that word, but I am saying that the school approach has gone too far overboard with it. Remember our learner from before? Well, the learner can show you what they like, what they're curious about. Sometimes you watch and see what they gravitate towards and what they move away from. Unschooling parents are kind of like scientists, observing and collecting data. It didn't work today, but it worked yesterday. I wonder why that is. Let's dig a little deeper. And we take our cues from their interests. What makes them more curious? What are they interested in? We don't need a curriculum because the answers, and certainly the questions, are standing right there in front of us, our own kids. And nobody knows your child better than you do. And even you don't know your child as well as they know themselves. So the combination of the two of you is enough. Don't insert someone else in there who has their bell curve and has decided that 6-year-olds must learn to read, and 8-year-olds must learn fractions, and 12-year-olds need to learn the imports and exports of Finland and Fiji. Who says? It's not true. So that's the big difference between school, homeschools too for that matter, and unschoolers. We shift the focus back to the learning, not on the lesson plans and the hoops that we want her to jump through. It's how kids learned when they were too young for school. We didn't say potty training begins in 3 weeks on Monday. Or, no, put down those Lego blocks, you need to be playing with bubbles now. We went with the flow. We helped them do more of what they enjoyed. And it brought more to their world. The same thing happens with us as adults. We decide we want to learn to knit or create a website. And we don't find ourselves taking a quiz on Friday to see if we mastered the material. We look at it ourselves and say, that's close. Let's watch another YouTube on it. Or, got it, let's make another. or whatever we're working on. All those teacher trappings, grades, quizzes, subjects, those are what schools have deemed important. They're not vital to learning. They're only vital to teaching. And unschoolers are getting out of that teaching business. Partly, though, it's understandable. Schools receive money for other people's kids, and they have to show some accountability. Unfortunately, along the way, school convinced us that kids need activities that have a specific purpose and a specific goal and an outcome that's got well-defined beginnings and ending points. And it's interesting because, their research doesn't really support this. They're going for it because it's easily quantified. It's much easier to quantify those quizzes and grades than to immerse yourself into the life of the child. They can't do it, but we can. Okay, but I just want to get back to this, because by drawing a line through academics, I don't want you to think unschoolers are anti-education. We're just anti-limiting it and prioritizing only those 7 subjects that school insisted upon. And we don't think that compartmentalizing subjects like that is easily transferable to real-world experiences. The real world is kind of like the messiest math word problem you ever encountered. There's overlap all over the place. We want our kids to grow socially and emotionally and physically and artistically and spiritually and morally, as well as intellectually and academically. Yet schools never paid much attention to all these other ways. They get tossed to the back burner. But just like Google showed us, it matters. This whole child development is better. And that's how unschooling works. It doesn't have to be taught, per se. One thing really does lead to another. You need to know something or develop some skill set before you move to the next thing. So you do it because it's interesting to you, because you're following your curiosity. It's relevant. You remember it. You don't need a quiz. And as parents, you certainly don't need to come up with your own plan of what needs to happen next, because then you actually interfere with their natural learning. Teaching like that strips away the intrinsic motivation. Recognizing the importance of discovery and creativity and social interaction even within the family, those are what matter more. So if you say, okay, if we remove all of that, what are we left with? Well, we're left with the whole world. What do they need? Opportunities to practice thinking critically, exploring their options, getting back on track if they hit a dead end, making mistakes and recovering from them right there with you to help them out as their partner. Those are the skills a person needs. So put Alpicon on your reading list. He's a teacher and a researcher. He even came to speak at the HSC conference a while back, probably like 1999. He writes a lot about what's wrong with schools. And if you still have some lingering, I'm not sure feelings, read more from him. This is a great article, well done, 10 Obvious Truths That We Shouldn't Be Ignoring. Pull that one up on Google. You can just write the title in there and that will work. You can go to alpicon.org and you can see he has spoken at lots of teaching conferences, and all of those have been transcribed. So they're really interesting. Plus there's a whole lot of videos. I think that you'll find him to be really helpful as you're trying to get school out of your head. And there's John Taylor Gatto. He is kind of a nut, but he will accurately explain what's going on in the school systems. Dumbing Us Down is a quick read. It was one of the first books that I read, and I pointed out things to my husband to help him kind of grasp the idea of where we were going with all of this. And it will help you reframe a lot of the ideas that you have about school. These are some of his other books too, and honestly I haven't read them all. I've read excerpts from them, but I've heard him speak also at the HSC conference years ago. But if you keep drifting back to thinking that school is a good place for kids, you might need to read more from him. Okay, so we've looked at why we do this, and now we need to dive a little deeper into our own unique ideas about our kids and our families. What do we think about how humans learn? What kind of parent do we want to be? What do we believe about children and childhoods? There could be a lot of untangling to do. We all have baggage, but it won't take as long as you think it will. And taking time for this kind of introspective work will prevent you from simply reacting when you get pushed. So that's part of the problem, right? That we're in such a rush. Remember that mentality of getting the answer quickly and moving on? Nobody wants to be the last one completing the quiz, right? But we need to take some time and ponder these things. We get these stories in our heads that we have no time to waste. Hurry up and figure out the path. That's why curriculum companies have such a field day with us. They know we're so afraid and we don't trust ourselves and we're eager to turn to them to handle it. Because that's one of the things we're conditioned to believe too, right? Trust the experts. So at first, this is going to feel awkward. A piece of your brain, that piece that's super conditioned and coexists with fear all the time, asking, really? This is how we're spending the time? Are you kidding me? We have stuff to do. But if you take the time to do this, you'll have a far better chance to achieve success than wandering around, wringing your hands, saying, I don't have time for all this. You do, especially if you ditch the curriculum. You've got plenty of time. And you'll have even more when you're more confident because you won't be second guessing yourself all the time. So first, get a handle on the fear. And this is done with knowledge, even though it will probably creep back in. Because sometimes we read something or we watch an inspiring webinar or we go to a conference and we think, yes, I get it. And then we get back home and we falter. We get a little nervous about it. And fear grabs us. So we continue to work on what we think about learning and parenting and children and their hardwiring. So here's what you really need. More information and more support. And with the internet, there are so many ways to get both. But you have to make time for it. You get swept up with the laundry and the meals and the kids' activities. But you made time to be here and to listen to this. Making time for the rest of it, it's what you're going to do instead of buying and wrangling the kids through curriculum. So if that little voice in your head that's arguing with everything I say, psyching you, this is how you recover the driver's seat from that little fear monger. And of course, he doesn't want to give you that steering wheel, but I want to remind you, if your mental argument is, sure, when will I have time for that? Well, you'll have time because you're not prepping lesson plans and gathering the kids all up so you can instruct them on whatever is in the scope and sequence. All those hours can now go for this. Here are some ways to seek out information. We have a ton of stuff over at Unschooling Mom to Mom, the website and Facebook group where you can get questions answered, and even Pinterest and Instagram. I'm having a lot of fun on Instagram. Or you can touch base with your local support group or call somebody you know. Or maybe you can join the private coaching group or hop on a quick phone call with me. But you stop those wheels from turning the fear over and over and over in your head. You're not getting anywhere. Just stop all the second guessing and do the work. You have the resources, use them. Because the sooner you do, the better. So when I was getting ready for this workshop, I realized that I had collected lots of memes and graphics that help offset this back to school wave that we're in the middle of. And every August, I've been writing about how to deal with it, what to do instead, how to not feel left out, how to help your kids not feel left out. So I decided I'd do a quick email series, 5 emails, just to help people build up their foundation, stop their second guessing. And it's going to start on August 20th, a Monday. I don't know how long I'll run it, but once somebody signs up after August 20th, it will just start up on the next day and run for 5 days. Just hate sitting on all this awesome information that could really help someone. So that's what I do. I make stuff all the time. Anyway, all right. So we have a few different ways if you want to work with me more than the free 5 emails. I've got a lot of other free stuff you can tap into, and I also have more for those who want to dive a little deeper or go a little quicker through all this getting started and getting stuck stuff. The Chaos to Confidence DIY course is really cool. I love it. A bunch of people did it a couple of years ago, and several of them are still hanging out with us together in the group coaching program. So that's been really fun. It's 9 different modules. You can see what the different topics are right there. The usual suspects, you know, naysayers and de-school, socialization. But I'm creating something new for unschoolers. My goal is that it's going to be ready the first week of September. If you need a little more hand-holding and you're just getting started, this is going to be for you. I'll walk you through the first steps into this unconventional approach for educating children. So if you're interested in that, send me an email at coaching@SuePatterson.com. Put new Unschooling Course in the subject line and we can talk some more about it. So instead of just doing each one of these little things, here's an easy link to get access to all of them. Look and see what fits you best. There's no reason for you to struggle, and there are there's resources out there that really can help you. What this will do is you'll get a response that tells you kind of an outline of everything, and then back in your email box, they'll all be hyperlinked, so they'll be easy for you to just click the things that you're interested in. Some are free, some have cost, but you can have it all collected together. So I hope you found this to be really helpful and getting school out of your head. So click this link and we'll stay connected. I'll be your unschooling lifeline. All right. Thanks for listening. See you online.